I have just read something that's exceptionally disturbing for you property owners. Freehold, leasehold. That's all we know. We don't know any more than that. What if I was to tell you about something called common hold, a direction that the governments want to take the future of ownership of property? Now, they're starting off with flats, and no doubt they'll move on to houses. So what happens is, under common hold, no, let's go to leasehold first. Leasehold, the freeholder owns the land, and then everyone else owns their apartments within that building. So
Technically.
you then have a management company that deals with the exterior and the repair. Common hold. The freeholder owns the land, and the freeholder owns the building. You may own your flat forever, but what are you owning? Absolutely nothing. This is all to do with the own nothing and be happy. The further I dig into it, the further I read, and I understand, because I'm Sarah Hayati, I make money make sense and the rest, but I've worked my whole life in banks with mortgages, with properties, with the legal side, with the tax side, to do with property in the UK. So this one here, the common hold, is a direction that they wish to take, and is likely to be applied to flats first. But don't think that it's not going to happen to your houses as well. You will buy a house, you own the land, you don't. The freeholder owns the land, the freeholder owns the house, but you own the house forever. But you own nothing.
I don't know if it's me. I don't know if it's me, but this is a little bit confusing. Um, I'm fully aware of how leasehold works. I'm fully aware of how freehold works. I'm fully aware of the conceptual idea of common hold. I think the way this is basically being kind of laid out is not very clear. So as a result, obviously, I don't want to make any assertive comments, and thus basically this be boiled down to someone just not literally articulating themselves as effectively as they want to. But if you understand what freehold is, if you understand what leasehold is, and have an idea of what common hold is, then you get an idea of what's basically being said here, which is the government have an intention to put you in a position where you own nothing, and as a result, you don't have any access to assets. Now, if that's going to happen, it's going to happen, and there's nothing much you're going to be able to do about it except for create more cash flow, as I usually tell people to do anyway. Now, if that's your agenda, okay, Samuel, you know what? I'm hearing what you're saying. I need to create more cash flow. I need to put myself in a position or predicament where I'm not subject to what's happening with freehold, what's happening with leasehold, what's happening with common hold. Then I'm going to encourage you to start to make your wealth a study. This is something I heard in 2005 from Jim Rohn whilst he was still alive. He used to say, if you believe you desire to be happy, why don't you make happiness a study? If you believe you desire to be wealthy, why don't you make wealth a study? And I'm going to basically say the exact same thing. We'll watch the last part of this video. Let's see if there's any more clarity that's going to come, and then I'll drop my 2 pence on the back of that.
Do you get me?
Not yet.
What is it that you own under common hold? Put your details, put your thoughts in the comments below, because there's huge changes coming, and I'm not here to scare you, because that's not my intention. I just read it and I come up with, and if you haven't caught up with any of this, then please do go through some of my old posts if you want to, but otherwise keep watching, follow, like, and share for more.
All right, so let's break this down so it's more, I guess, relevant for us, right? The first thing is leasehold gives you legal ownership or rights over the specific entity of a property, all right? And it's not the land, it's not the additional features. Okay, so if you have a flat, most flats in the UK are on a leasehold basis, so you basically end up having ownership of the specific apartment or the specific flat or that specific condo, depending on where you are and where you're based will determine how you determine or use language for these things, right? Freehold, typically, right, Cyrus said there that it's ownership of the land. It's technically not even ownership of the land. We can call it ownership of the land, but the reason it's technically not ownership of the land is because the UK government specifically has done things in the past which have allowed them to take people's land who actually own the freehold rights to the land. Okay. And if you want to dig into that a bit deeper, you can just look at some of the black churches in East London and what they've gone through in terms of the ownership of their land, and when we had the Olympics in 2012 and what happened in that predicament. For those of you who are interested in doing some research in that, you can check that out and you'll find out exactly what I'm talking about. So freehold ownership in the UK, the United Kingdom, because it's a nation which is classified as a kingdom, has certain stipulants where even as a freeholder, your land can still be taken away from you. Now, it's rare that it's done, but it can be done. And again, point in question, 2012, the Olympics. Now, if you want to think about commonhold and understand what commonhold is where there's an ownership which becomes common to more than just the leaseholder or more than just the freeholder. So as it was articulated, the freeholder may own the building and now you own the apartment in the building. Okay. Now, the thing we need to think about when it comes to this whole approach of the government taking your assets away from yourself is, what are your assets in the first place? All right. Now, there are houses which have leasehold legislation around them. Okay, so there are some people in the UK, not as many as flats, definitely not as many as flats, but there are many people in the UK who own houses which are on leasehold agreements, which means that for 99 years or for 125 years, or in some cases, as they started to roll out, for 999 years, they have a leasehold ownership of their apartment. And after those 999 years, they have to renew the lease. Okay. So that's the issue with the leasehold arrangement. And that's one of the reasons why the King's speech, where the King Charles recently spoke about basically abolishing or working towards abolishing the leasehold framework, is a possibility. Now, in order to abolish the leasehold framework, they might have to bring out some new snazzy ideas like commonhold, right? And they might utilize these things to make them feel as though, okay, if we put a commonhold on the building, the freeholder is no longer the only owner of the building, or the freeholder is no longer the only owner of the land. Now all the leaseholders become commonhold owners as well, right? Which increases your ownership. So this is actually going to be a situation where for different people, it might mean different things. If you own flats, you might be someone thinking to yourself, you know what, maybe I need to transition into houses. If you're someone who owns houses with leaseholds, definitely this is something to think about. But if you're someone who traditionally, like most investors, traditionally you focused on buying houses, then this shouldn't be something that's of a big issue to you. But there is a big issue, which I think is even more glaring in this situation. And it's actually something that I want to bring up. And that is the simple fact that many a time we are struggling in the mindset of, oh, should I own a flat? Should I own a house? And we're not realizing the reality of why we're owning it in the first place. Are we owning it for wealth to be able to pass on? If we are, then out of these three that we've mentioned, freehold is the key. Are we owning it for cash flow, just for revenue? If we are, then maybe whichever it is, whether it's a freehold, commonhold, or leasehold, it wouldn't even make a difference. Why? What makes a difference when you buy for cash flow is the cash flow. And a lot of the time what happens as people are thinking about buying assets, accumulating assets, they're not thinking about the purpose behind the asset accumulation. Because if you think about the asset accumulation, one of the examples I give to many of my friends a lot of the time is this, right? If you buy a house, let's say you buy this house, and after you buy this house, because we had this in the 2020 rise in prices. We also had this in the 2008 inflation, right? One of the things, let's say we bought this house for £100,000. Okay, you buy this house for £100,000. Let's say you use a mortgage, etc., whatever, right? But let's say you bought this house to generate cash flow, and let's say, for example, you set things up, you're renting it out, and this house makes you £1,000 per month. Okay, now let's say there's a downturn in the market. The market is hit with inflation and all of these other things that affect the nation, and the value of your property plummets from £100,000 to £50,000. Here's a great question that we all need to ask ourselves. Should you care? Now, the reality about this is most people are going to say, yes, my house has dropped by 50% of its value. I'm going to tell you why. Because most people are thinking like the personal private homeowner. If you're thinking like a professional investor, your question should be, why did I buy this house? Well, I bought this house for the cash flow. So here's the question. Under these new economic terms, where the house value has gone from 100,000 to 50,000, has the cash flow changed? And if the answer is no, if the cash flow is still £1,000 per month and it's finding no way to slow, then you've got no problem with your ability to continue to financially grow. And the reason why is because we live in a world where so many people are focused on things that fit other people, that they're not taking the time to think about the things that fit them. What fits you? Are you buying for cash flow? Are you buying for equity? Are you buying for profits? Depending on how you're buying should determine what you're doing and why you're doing it. If this has been helpful for you, feel free to hit the like, feel free to subscribe, become a part of a tribe, and side by side with that, let me know your comments below about what you think about the ideas on cash flow, commonhold, leasehold, freehold, and where it's all going to go as we continue to grow. With that being said, remember, as I usually say, small keys open big doors, and I'll see you on the next video. Let's go.
Small keys open big doors.